I'm going to show you everything Premiere can do in about 20 minutes. First of all, you can import stuff. Let's open up Premiere. I got it open. I'm going to say new project. Tell it where you want to put it. Project name, I'll just call this Try. Okay, I've got a new project called Try, and here's the project bin, and you can import media here if you want to start your project. Go to File, Import. Okay, I've got a little bit of everything here. I've got a whole bunch of videos, a whole bunch of stills I'm bringing in, TIFFs, JPEGs, all sorts of stuff. I'm going to bring those in. Almost everything imports pretty well. Sometimes things do not import very well, in which case you need to maybe open them up in this software here, the VLC player down here. This player seems to do a good job of converting stuff. So look into that if you want to change one file into something else. A lot of times files that come off of a cell phone don't work very well in Premiere, and you have to change them to something else. So after I bring all this stuff in, I've kind of looked through and I found one clip that has the right settings that I really love. I did that by right-clicking it and looking at its properties, and I could see 1920 by 1080 is the perfect size for high definition. 24 frames a second, which is basically what that is great for making a filmic kind of look. You can go 30 if you want to make it look like a video. So I find a clip like that that's really kind of the right settings for the final movie I want to make. Right-click that and say New Sequence from Clip. So now everything I bring in, it might be a little bigger, it might be a little smaller, but it's all geared towards that size, which was 1920 by 1080. A good standard high definition size. So you see now you can kind of just bring your clips in, anything you think you want to use in your movie, just bring them in and set them here, and they usually just snap into each other using this little magnet right here. You can turn on and off snap, so it just pops right into where it's supposed to go. So here's a title sequence. I can put this up here, and if I hit Control, it'll push everything over. So this is kind of how I do a rough assembly. You can put your clips in there and get them all lined up in order that you want them to appear. You see, I might put this one in too just for fun because it's got some nice colors. Some of them have audio, some of them don't. See down here, audio, this one doesn't. If you want to see the waves better, you can pry this open right here. If you want to see the opacity, things like that, you can pry it open, which I generally try to do. I like to be able to see these lines. So here I have a bunch of clips in place. Let's say I don't like this clip and it's just too long. I want to get rid of the clown at the end right here. So I'm going to back up. I'm just scrolling. I just sort of clicked up here and scrolled. So try that out a little bit. You really don't even need to do that. Basically, you just come to the end. So I'm going to pull it over and it'll kind of snap to where that line is, and I've just done my first edit. So that's how you edit. You come to the beginning, you pull it over, you look to the right and see if you like what it looks like. This is your preview over here. This shows you what you're editing and what your final movie is going to look like almost always, unless there's red up here, which basically means it might need to render some more. We can just pull parts closer together and snap them like this. You can also draw a marquee over all of them, and then that'll snap into place. So basically I've done my first edit right there. There's also other ways to edit. You can get these cool tools up here. This is good if you want to draw some shapes. This is just to pan things around and to zoom in and out on different things. This is a pen tool, which you could draw and then have type stick to it. These are different ways of editing that are a little more advanced. You don't really even need to know hardly any of these to make an awesome movie. Most movies have just straight cuts. Even great old famous Hollywood movies are mostly all just straight cuts. You don't need a lot of these tools, but eventually you want to learn them just so you know all the tools you can use. Like a doctor needs to know how to use a scalpel. You need to know how to use all these tools eventually. This selects clips and allows you to move them over. If you click on this one, you can click here and everything behind it will move over. See that? Or everything behind it will move up. That's kind of a handy tool right there. And this is just the one you most often use, which is the pointer, because you can do almost anything you want with this. You just click and drag like that. Play around with the editing tools. The only other one here that's really good to know is this one, which is the rate stretch tool. Let's show you on this one. See this clip here with the Pac-Man? It's going pretty slow. So if I grab here with the rate stretch tool and make it about half as long, it'll be twice as fast. So here it is. Now it's going a little faster. I can make it even twice as fast as that. Now it'll go flipping by really quick. Or I could slow it way down by dragging it out. Whoops, grab the end here, drag it way out, and that will now allow me to slow everything down. That's this really cool tool here called the rate stretch tool. That's one of the most important tools. The other one that's really helpful is this razor here. You can get on the razor. If you sort of know where you want to click it, maybe you can click it right on the line that you're stopped at, or anywhere really. You can just click and it will create a new chop there. And once again, the interesting thing about this software is it doesn't mess up the original clips. This is referencing the clips that are on my hard drive. All these clips are not really burned in here. They're just referenced. If you move them around on your hard drive, they'll disappear down here. It'll say, hey, where did this clip go? Be aware that you may end up having troubles if you move the clips around on your desktop, hard drive, on your actual computer. Once you get them set into a nice neat folder, don't move them around too much or you'll lose your links. So here we are editing. Let me make that kind of normal speed again. I don't like how slow it was. So I can make it kind of a normal speed, and then even though I edited it and chopped off the end, I can still get on here and pull it right back out. It's still there. It's not a permanent change. So another thing you can do is you can double click a clip and it'll open up in this kind of preview window here, and then you can hit play, and when you see a piece that you like, you can scroll through it like I'm doing here. So yeah, I just kind of grab this playhead, they call it, and you could say mark it in. You can go over here to where you want it done and say mark it out, and then you can just grab this clip and bring it down. You can bring down the video only, the audio only, or you can drag the whole clip down just by clicking on it and dragging it down. I clicked up here, I drug it down. So that's kind of another way to do a rough cut pre-edit. Alright, I don't like this gap, so I'm going to pull this over and snap it to the other one. So I've shown you all the basics of how to edit now. It's pretty straightforward, pretty easy. Let's go on to a few more advanced things. Transitions. So I've got this clip over here, and I've got this clip here, and let's say I want to make a fade in between the two of them. It doesn't really work unless you have enough material that could be sort of overlapped. See, that would be good. We could overlap those. You don't need to overlap them, but you kind of need the excess material to be able to do a transition. Transitions are under Window, Effects. Everything that you need to kind of add to your clips is usually under Effects. So when I click on it, this shows up. Here we have transitions and we have effects. We also have audio fades and audio effects, like you can make it sound echoey and stuff like that. So when you get a chance, look at all these. They're really fun. This is where it gets more advanced too. Just trying these out is pretty amazing. There's a lot of great choices here. So in terms of video transitions, let's open that up and we'll just do something like a page peel, which is kind of cheesy, but you know, let's try it out. You grab the transition that you want, you drag it down and you set it on the line, and if there's enough kind of overlapping material, it'll go right on the line. If not, it'll kind of go to the right or left. So now if you look at our footage, there's a little page peel there on the right. See that? So let's do that with one other clip. I'm going to make this one actually a little shorter so there is that kind of overlapping media. I'm going to pull them together. So let's do an iris. Let's do iris diamonds. We'll grab them. We'll set them right here in between. Now that they're overlapping more or less, and there's some hidden footage called heads and tails, it will sit right on the line and you'll have one change into the other. So I'll hit play, see how it's changing. So that's pretty awesome. Use those sparingly. They're a little cheesy. A lot of these can be edited if you double click them. It can give you different kinds of settings that you can change. So that's how you do a transition. Two clips with somewhat overlapping or hidden material, and on the line between them you put the transition. They have to be butted up against each other. Next, let's do a title. I'm going to hit minus, 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 which is basically just using this kind of zoom in out tool down here. I like using minus because it's faster, plus to zoom in and out. Okay, so here's my movie so far. It's looking pretty good. This bar tells me what I'll export when I'm done. That's what this bar is for. If you need a little extra black, you can drag this over and you'll have a black space down here. So that's kind of an important bar. This is called the work area bar. Sometimes you have to render these little red pieces here, and sometimes you have to control what you export. That's what this bar helps with. If you don't see it, it's under here usually. So we've done some transitions. Let's do some fades. I'm going to go over to this clip here. I'm going to go plus plus. And remember how I pried this open? You want to pry it open enough that you see these little lines. See, there's a line here and there's a line here. This is opacity. One way you can do this that's pretty easy to remember is use this pen tool. You just click. It makes a little pip, a little dot. You click, and then you click what you clicked and drag it. And now I have a fade out in the movie. See how it's fading out in the picture? Pretty cool. I also can do an audio fade out, which is going to be really important as you get a little more advanced. Just click anywhere and then drag it over like that. So now both the picture and audio will fade out. Alright, so that's pretty cool. Zoom in on there a little bit, prying these open, and you will then see that you can fade things in and out. Sometimes you need to make a plateau, I call it, where you fade it in and you leave it on, and then when you get to the end of your clip, you click again, fade it out like that. Okay, so that's what I call a plateau. In other words, you turn it on, keep it on, turn it off. You do that a lot with sound and video. So that's how you do a lot of different kinds of fades. Fades can also be controlled up here in effects controls, which is a little more advanced. If you click on the clip using your pointer here, a lot of different options show up here. See, there's my little dots, the little pips I made on this clip right here. It shows you kind of what they're set at. Basically what I've done is created an animation. See how this number's changing right here? I basically created a little animation so that things fade in, stay in, and then fade out. That's animation right there. There's other things you can animate here, which we'll go over in a little bit too. Let's put an effect on here now. So I've got this kind of church here. Let's say I want to make my little church black and white. Go under Effects, Video Effects. So some of the things you could do, or you can adjust what the levels are, just like you do in Photoshop. You could put blur on it. You could put color correction on it. This is the most common one that people use. LUMETRI. You could put a tint on it. So basically anything you can do in Photoshop, things you can do with your Instagram filters, you can do all of that in Premiere. So that's pretty neat. So let's do image control black and white. I take this, I drag it down and set it on the clip I want to go black and white. Boom, black and white. See that? Let's do another one. I'm going to hit undo, which is Control Z, of course. And let's try something else here. Let's try LUMETRI. Let's put that on there. This is probably the most common one people use because it's got them all. See this? This is all the settings that you need in order to change everything in your video. You can change the color temperature. You can add a tint or a tone to it. You can make it more saturated or black and white. You can change the exposure, make it brighter, less bright, more contrast. This is all those cool effects and filters that you use on Instagram, basically. They're all right there. There's also a bunch of creative ones. So this is more advanced. LUMETRI Color, try that out. That's basic color correction. One other really cool advanced tab that you might want to check out is Essential Sounds. You go down here and you say, this is music. I'm going to change it into music, and it gives you all sorts of cool things you can do to your music, changing the loudness, adding effects and filters on it. So now let's do a title. I'm going to come up here and grab this little T, and I'm just going to click here wherever I think I want a title. Let's put it over this church right here, and I'll just click where I want it, and it gets it all set up, and I'm just going to type in CHURCH. Alright, and then once I have this, I can kind of double, triple click it, and then all that can be edited here if you go under Essential Graphics. It gives you a lot of cool choices of things you can do. So this is one of those Essential Sound, Essential Video, Essential Graphics. These are kind of the new panels that Premiere set up to make it a lot easier to get things done. So there's a lot of cool options here. The main ones you might need are making it bigger, maybe scooching it over a little bit. See how I'm kind of scooching it over? You might want to rotate it here. You can rotate it by clicking on the number and pulling it. Alright, so there's lots of cool things you can do here. Making it see-through or not is something you can do right there. There's also styles, which is kind of cool. You can save a style, import a style. In other words, same kind of stuff you do in Photoshop. It's all pretty much here. If you have a whole bunch of text, you can do this and make it all the different lines can show up in different ways. Let's see if I can just click here, keep typing stuff, enter, keep typing stuff. And I'm going to change the fill to a red. Now it'll be red. See that? If you click, you can't really see it very well unless you click off of it. I'm going to get my little pointer here, which is all these tools have a little shortcut next to it. See, next to the V, next to selection tool, words, it says V. So anytime you push V, you'll be able to quickly get to your selection thing. So you can move it around a little bit. There's some good things you can do with this. All right, so now I have a cheesy little title on there, and you can animate that, of course, if you go back into these settings here. And if you look at effects controls, basically all the graphic stuff I've done and drawn in there and typed in there can now be animated. So play with that a little bit. You jump a little later and you make a change, and it will remember it and it will animate it for you. Scale it, rotate it. See that? So those are cool things you can do under effects controls. That's probably the hardest panel to find in Premiere is effects controls. So you have effects in one tab where you steal them from and stick them on your footage, and the other tab is effects controls where you put all your controls on them and do motion and turn on. Whenever you turn on a stopwatch, you're preparing to animate. We've already done a little motion, but let me just show you that one more time. Let's say I like this eye, but it's a little bit too small. I'll go under effects controls and I'll make sure I have it selected, and all these options will come up of things I can animate and change. So first I'm going to just make it bigger by changing the scale here. You can either type it in or just scroll it. So let's make it about that big, you know. So I've changed it to 352%. Starting to get a little pixelated. I have to watch out for that. Then you can animate things, like I could say start here, start on this scale, don't rotate yet, but rotate in a minute. Those are the main things you might want to change. Maybe opacity. Here it is. It's going to look like this at this point. Then I just say, okay, a little while later, I want you to look different. I want you to move over here. I want you to get smaller. And I want you to rotate one time. I'll type 1 in and hit enter. Also, I want you to start to fade out. See that? So now we've got what is basically an animation. And that's just the beginning of animation. And this right here, if you can figure out how to say look like this at this point and look like this at this point, you are learning all the basics of After Effects, which is an amazing program, a lot more animation based. You're also learning all the basics of 3D Studio Max, Maya. You're learning all the basics of Cinema 4D, which comes with Adobe After Effects. It's kind of embedded in there. So anyway, play with these. Make sure you know how to do some basic motion and animation. We've already talked about transparency here, where you grab the line. Let me hit V, and that will change my tool. And you can click on your little dot, and that will make things fade out. This will make things fade back in. This will make things fade out. This will make things fade back in. So let me hit play here, and we'll see what happens. The nice thing about Premiere is most all the stuff you do will show up right away. You don't have to wait very long. So that's a pretty cool effect right there. I might drag that up a little higher and put that over the top of something in a second here. So I can put that over the top of this. For example, let me hit R for rate stretch tool, and I'll make this one just last longer. So now this one will kind of give way to the one below, kind of fade in and out. So that's something you may want to mess with too, is having things superimposed, they call this, right? There's also one other really neat advanced thing you can do with superimpositions. I don't really like the way this is blending here with the stuff in the background. So use these blend modes right here. See? I love this. You go in there and you say multiply. See how it burns in? Or you could say lighten. See how it kind of burns in now? Semi-transparent. Things are sort of bleeding together. Overlay. That's kind of neat looking. Linear light. This is something you can also do in After Effects and in Photoshop if you're used to that. So play with the blending modes. You just have to have the clip selected. So let's try that one and we'll play it. See, it's kind of weird. It's kind of neat how they blend. I love them. I find them to be really fascinating, kind of random, a little bit out of my control, so I love messing with that. That's the blend mode right there. So the next thing we want to talk about is basic sound. So once again, you can pull in a piece of sound here fairly easily. Go back into your project, find a piece of sound you like, and stick it in down here. Pry it open so you can mess with it a little bit. And then already here I can get the pen tool, or I can use V. I hit V to get the little pointer tool to show up. And I can hit Control, and that will allow me to have a plus sign, which allows me to add a whole bunch of dots really quick. So that's what I like to do. I do that a lot. This is the only bad thing about it. Sometimes it creates a Bezier curve. So that could be both good and bad if you know what you're doing. So now I'll have my sound fading in here as this music kind of plays through. All right, my little voiceovers and stuff I've been working on, fading up. Here's where I can watch my levels. You don't want it to jam into the red. Hitting the red's okay, but sticking in the red is not very good. So already I'm going to say turn this music down. My voiceover's distorting because I turned it up too loud when I was messing with it the other day. So here you go. It's starting to play with fading things in and out. Remember, as the clip is selected, you also might want to go to Essential Sounds tab and say this is a voiceover, and then it gives you a lot of cool options of things you can do. You can boost, you know, how loud it is, repair it, add some clarity. There's lots of different little tabs here of things that you can mess with. So play around with that a little bit if you want. You can animate the levels, make it louder and softer. You can enhance speech. You can EQ it so it sounds like a telephone, things like that. There's all these kind of settings here to make the voice sound a little different. Here's old radio. That might sound pretty cool. So it's getting rid of all the highs and lows. So mess with the EQ. It's really interesting. And all these things that you put on are going to show up again under effects controls. See that? The graphic equalizer is here. You can go in and edit it and actually turn up the mids, turn down the bass, turn up the highs. So there's lots of cool things you can do with the audio here. Just mess with it. Most of this you're going to learn through experience. And it can all be animated. See little stopwatches? So it can get nice and complicated or pretty simple. So there's my sound so far. We've speeded footage up by using the rate stretch tool. And I'm going to pull this clip over to the side here, and I'm going to take this clip, little Pac-Man clip I made here, and I am going to change the speed in various ways. One is to just use the rate stretch tool. You hit the R, get close to the edge, drag it out. The longer it is, the slower it'll be. See that? I'm going to mute this by hitting this little mute button here. That will not export if you do that, so make sure you turn that back on later. So now it's going really slow. Let's speed up. It tells you here it's like 17%, right? It's been really slowed down. Now it'll be like 200% or something. Let me hit plus, 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 plus. It's 100%. It's the normal speed. So let's double it, make it 200%. Plus, plus, plus. See, now it's 255%. It's going to go really fast. There we go. Cool. So that's one way to change the speed. The other way is to right-click it and look for the speed here. And it gives you a lot of different things you can do. If I really want it to be exactly 200%, sometimes I do, I'll just type it in. Now it'll be 200% speed or double speed, right? Let me right-click that again and look at speed. This is the most important one here, is reverse. I use this all the time. Hit OK, and now the footage will be going backwards. Let's see if Pac-Man goes backwards here. Yep, there he goes. Okay, so those are the most important things about right-clicking it and looking at the speed. I can get rid of this purple color in here and have it be see-through. So let's try to do that, even though it's going to look ugly. Let's give it a shot. So I'm going to pull this clip over. I'm going to set this clip above it. Things have to be above each other if you want to superimpose them. And I'm going to click on this clip. I'm going to find in my effects, I'm going to find something that looks like green screen or color key or something like that. Let's find it. It should be under video effects, keying, See keying here? So find that. And you can just put a color key on there. Grab it, set it on there. And now nothing's really going to happen unless you tell it what you want to be see-through. I need to go back under my effects controls. I am going to say I want this color to be see-through. So I'm going to take this little eyedropper, select my purple, and now all the purple's gone see-through. It's kind of ugly, but you can make it thinner, and you can add a feather to it and stuff like that. Okay, so you see how all the purple has gone pretty well see-through. We're getting some pretty cool effects there. Let me hit play. I like it. So if you don't like that and you want to get rid of it, you just go back up here to the color key thing you added in under your effects controls, because you can have all sorts of effects. You just turn off this little FX. You can turn it back on anytime you want to see the results. Now there's one other way to make things go see-through. I'm turning that off and leaving it off. Let's take this pen tool here and create what's called a mask. So I'm going to take this pen tool and it creates a mask, and then what I can do is come over here and I can chop something out. Click and drag. This is very illustrator-y. Click and drag, click, click, click and drag to make a curve. So this is basic kind of using of the pen tool. It's a little inaccurate on here. You probably have to zoom in to get it to really do what you want it to do. So now I have this shape. I'm just going to crank it out really fast. You can draw almost anything you want. Now I have this kind of humanoid shape here, and that has been cut out, and I have that mask. See, right there's my mask. Now if I want, I can change the shape of the mask. I can feather it, make the edges a little softer. I can change that and animate that. I can change how see-through it is, and I can make it expand, or in other words, I can make the mask grow bigger, 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 bigger. Alright, so for now let's do mask path. I'll start here, see where this little keyframe is. I'll say, okay, put the keyframe there, and a little later, let's make this a different shape. Let's see if I can do this. I'll click on the mask, and all the little dots show up. And so now I'm going to change it, and you'll see that this animates in a second here. Once again, it's a little bit clunky on here. It's not always as accurate as I would like it to be. But if I zoomed in, it'd probably be all right. So now I have this keyframe, and I say look like this at this point, and then in between it through here until I get to this point, and it's going to do it for me. It's going to animate it for me. So let me hit my space bar. See how that mask is changing? Let's do that again. Hit play. Here's my little dude. He shows up, and then he starts changing. All right, so that's something you can do too, is to animate a mask. It's not showing up. Where did it go? Well, you have to click on the clip that you put it on, and then it'll show up. Here's my mask. If I don't like it, I just hit delete. So let's finish this movie up. I'm going to hit minus, minus, minus to zoom out. Let's say I really only want this part of my movie. Maybe I'll grab these clips with a marquee and drag them over until they snap into place. I'll hit plus plus again just to kind of see what my movie looks like. It's looking pretty cool. Got some good clips in there, some interesting effects going on. I've played with the sound. I've turned the sound up and down. You can also pan the sound right and left. Let me show you that really quick. It's hard to find. You have to kind of go under this little green square here. It's really weird. You go under there and then you say pan, balance. And it puts a new line in here. It's the same color as the other. It's really clunky. So you can now pan from left side of the stereo to right side of the stereo like that, okay? That's something you can also do if you want to. Right click it, panner, balance. See that? So that's another thing you can do if you want someone to like walk in on one side of the room up here and cross over to the other side of the room and their voice goes with them. You can do that by panning, okay? So there's a bunch of things we've done. Another thing that I really like to do with audio, I'll just show you, is to normalize it. Right click it, audio gain, normalize it. That takes everything up to a pretty good strong wave, like these big high waves will be up at the top, and then it'll kind of just stop at the top of the wave. So in other words, it'll turn it all the way up but not too far up. You could also say -3, so it turns it all the way up and down a little bit, or you can go a little higher if you want, but usually normalizing is really good, and it'll change waves that are weak into waves that are stronger and make them louder but not too loud. Last thing you really want is distortion. Like, see here, this is almost chopped off a little bit, top of the waves. That usually means that this part is distorted. So you want to try to avoid that, and when you're playing it, keep your eye on your levels over here. This is muted, see? Remember how I muted that? You always got to remember to turn that off. You can hear it's distorted a little bit. Spray foam. Kind of sounds rat scratchy to me is what I call it. Let's export this. File, export, media. I've got this bar over where I want it to be. So there's a new window here to export. Basically, you can go through and say I want this video to be full high definition, 24 frames. You can change all these things if you want. You can, turn this off and change them if you need to. Audio, you can go in and make sure that it's pretty good high quality, 4800 kilohertz. Stereo is awesome. And you can even make it go higher quality or lower quality if you want here. So those are all the things that you can change. You can also directly post it to YouTube. You can post it to Vimeo, Twitter, Facebook, all these awesome social media things, which is really what I'm trying to encourage everyone to do. So when you're done picking it out, it'll have your movie kind of selected here. It's kind of got the ins and out points selected right here of what I'm going to export. See, there's my movie. And then I just say export, and then I tell it where I want it to go. I should have told it where I wanted it to go before. So now it's making my movie, and I have no idea where it's putting it. This happens all the time. So when you export it, look and see where you're saving it. Put it on the desktop or somewhere you can find it. All right. Let me show you one other way to do that. File, export, media. Here it is again. So this is where you choose where it's going to save. I would change that maybe to desktop, right? Save it. So that's what I should have done, is told it where I wanted it to go. But what I really wanted to show you was this, send to media encoder. This is kind of new, like 10 years old. It's a really good way to export your movie and still be able to edit. What it does is it opens it up in a separate piece of software called Adobe Media Encoder. And once it opens it up, you can kind of set all your settings there, just like I just did a second ago. And I can export it using the Adobe Media Encoder. And then I can go back and keep editing, which is sometimes really important when you're working on a lot of drafts for clients and stuff like that. You want to be able to export 10 versions of different kinds of videos. You can stack up like 20 of them here, and then all of a sudden you can just hit export, go to sleep, and in the morning you will have 10 videos, right? So here's where it goes. You could say I want to put it on the desktop, put save, and here's all my settings here. H.264 is probably one of the best compressions out there for quality and size, which is what you're always trying to balance. And here we are back into some of the original settings of Premiere. Sometimes I'll do 2 passes to boost up the quality. Sometimes I'll turn up the bit rate just so I have a little higher quality. You can't hardly notice it, but sometimes it's worth it. I always turn these on just out of habit, different kinds of buttons like that. Maybe I'll give it a better name here. I'll call it Clown Done or something like that. .001, maybe put the date on there, save it on the desktop, and then I hit OK, and it's all here in the media encoder. You just put this little green play button, and now it's making it. The cool thing about it, while it's making it, see, I can just minimize this and I can go right back to editing, so I don't waste any time while things are rendering or exporting. So those are all the best basics of how to edit in Premiere. We went over how to bring stuff in. There's all sorts of things you can bring in, from stills, videos, audio, all different kinds of videos. Then you can chop them up a little bit. You can add effects into it. You can add transitions. You can turn things up or down in terms of volume and in terms of opacity. You can add titles in there. You can move things around with motion and animation using these cool little stopwatches up here. There's all sorts of neat things you can do with this program, and I hope you'll check it out and make some really cool stuff with it now. Here's my video right here. Load them up on YouTube, start getting some follows. If you like this video, of course, hit like on it so I can get rich. Thanks. Bye.